Doctor, I can give out my eyes. Please, sell it. I need money. I need to treat my son. He is my only child. Doctor, please, I have nobody to run to. I do not want my child to die. The woman's voice shook so badly that even the nurse standing by the door had to look away. It was not the kind of cry that came from ordinary pain. It was the kind that came from a heart that had been beaten by life until it no longer knew how to beg with pride. The kind of cry that came from a mother who had already exhausted tears, prayers, fasting, hope, and strength, and had now arrived at the final door of desperation. She was barefoot. Her wrapper was old, faded at the edges, and damp with sweat. Her blouse had been washed so many times, it had lost its color. Her face was tired, but her eyes were fierce, with one stubborn thing. Only a mother could carry refusal to let death touch her child while she was still breathing. On the hospital bed behind her lay a little boy, no older than 6. His small body looked too still. His lips were dry. His breathing was weak. Every few seconds, his tiny fingers moved faintly, as though he were trying to hold on to the world. The doctor removed his glasses, slowly, and rubbed his face. "Madame," he said softly, "calm down." But how could she calm down? How could a mother calm down when the child she carried in her womb for 9 months, the child she had fed with hunger and tears, the child she had used her own body to shield from rain and sun, was slipping away before her eyes because of money? Money. That thing that sat in the hands of some people like sand. That thing that hid from others like light from the blind. That thing that could decide who lived and who died. The woman fell to her knees. "Doctor, please, take one eye. Take anything. Kidney, blood, anything. I will survive with one eye. But my son, please, let my son survive." The doctor's throat tightened. He had seen poverty. He had seen death. He had seen mothers cry. But this one pierced differently. Because even in her brokenness, there was no madness in her voice. There was clarity. This woman had thought about this. She had measured the worth of her own body and decided every part of it was less important than her son. The doctor turned slightly and looked at the boy again. Then he looked back at the mother. "What is your name?" he asked. The woman lifted her wet face. "Ada," she whispered. That was how the past returned like a storm. Because many years before that day, before sickness, before hospitals, before begging, before heartbreak, had carved lines into Ada's face. Ada had once been the kind of woman people described with soft smiles. Kind, hardworking, quiet, beautiful, in a simple way. Ada and Uche lived in the city now, but they had not started there. No. They came from a small village where the roads were dusty, the roofs leaked during heavy rain, and poverty sat openly in front of every compound like a stubborn visitor. Both of them knew what it meant to be hungry and still smile. They knew what it meant to sleep and wake with the same problem. They knew what it meant to hear rich people talk about life as if struggle was a personal failure. They had grown up with nothing. Nothing except hope. And even that hope was thin. Uche was not always the popular businessman people came to greet with both hands in Aba Market. He was once just another poor young man with tired slippers, one good shirt, and a dream too big for his pocket. He farmed when he had to. He pushed loads for people when he could. He helped traders in the market to earn little coins. He did anything honest that could bring food into the house. Ada, too, did not know luxury. She washed clothes by the riverside for people in the village. She washed wrappers, children's uniforms, old bedsheets, and sometimes even burial clothes. Her hands were always rough from soap and water. Her back ached often, but she kept working because work was better than waiting for pity. And in the middle of all that hardship, Ada loved Uche with a kind of love that does not calculate. She loved him when he had no money. She loved him when he had no direction. She loved him when other girls laughed at the idea that she would marry a poor man with empty pockets and ambitious talk. To Ada, Uche was not empty. He was simply not yet found by favor. Some evenings, after a long day, both of them would sit outside their small mud house. The sky would darken slowly. Crickets would sing from the bushes. Ada would rest her tired body against the wall, while Uche spoke about the city as if it were a promised land. One day, he would say, I will leave this village. I will make something of myself. I will not die poor. Ada would smile at him. I know, she would reply. Sometimes she said it because she believed him. Sometimes she said it because she wanted him to keep believing himself. Their poverty was real, but so was their bond. Then one day, everything changed. That morning had begun like every other morning. Ada tied her wrapper firmly around her chest, balanced a basin of clothes on her head, and made her way to the river. The sun was still soft. Birds flew low above the water. The breeze was cool, carrying the smell of wet earth and leaves. At the riverbank, women were already at work, some scrubbing clothes, some fetching water, some gossiping about husbands, pregnancies, deaths, and neighbors. Ada found her corner and began to wash. She was deep in thought, her hands moving from habit, when she noticed a shadow fall across the water. She looked up. A man stood there. He was not from the village. That much was clear from his dressing and the strange calm in his face. He looked tired, like someone who had walked for a very long distance. Dust clung to the hem of his clothes. His feet were swollen and red. He greeted her. My daughter, he said, please, may I ask for your help? Ada straightened. Yes, sir. My feet are burning from the journey. Can I trouble you for a bowl of water so I can soak them for a while? Ada did not hesitate. In that village, poor people understood the language of suffering without many words. She quickly rinsed one of the bowls she used for clothes, fetched clean water, and set it before him. Please sit, she said. The man sat on a flat stone near the riverbank and placed his feet inside the bowl. He let out a long breath, like someone who had been given far more than water. For some time, he said nothing. Ada returned to washing, but now and then she glanced at him. There was something about him she could not explain. He did not seem ordinary, yet he did not carry himself like a proud man either. His eyes were tired, but deep, like they had seen many roads and many secrets. When the water had cooled his feet, the man stood up. Thank you, he said. Ada nodded. It is nothing. But the man looked at her for a long moment. Nothing? He repeated. To people with plenty, maybe. But to someone in pain, Kindness is never nothing. He reached into the fold of his cloth and brought out a stone. It was not large. It fit in his palm. It looked dull at first glance, like an ordinary stone one might kick aside on a village path. But when the sunlight touched it, something inside it flashed faintly. He handed it to Ada. "Keep this carefully," he said. Ada blinked. "Sir, treasure it well. After 7 days, something special will come from it." Ada stared at the stone, confused. She almost asked what he meant, but by the time she looked up properly, the man had already turned and begun walking away. "Sir!" she called. He did not stop. He kept walking until the bushes swallowed him. The women nearby laughed when Ada told them what happened. "Ada, so you have started collecting stones from strangers now?" Maybe he was mad. Or maybe he wanted to test whether village people are foolish. Ada laughed with them, but not fully, because when she held the stone, it felt strangely warm. That evening, she wrapped it carefully in a piece of old wrapper and took it home. Uche had just returned from the farm, his legs dusty, his shoulders tired. She told him everything exactly as it happened. Uche listened quietly. When she placed the wrapped stone in his hand, his face changed slightly. "This is what he gave you?" "Yes. And he said after 7 days something special will come from it." Ada nodded. Uche turned the stone over in his hand. His eyes narrowed, not with disbelief, but with thought. He was poor, yes, but poverty sharpens certain instincts. People who have suffered long enough learn to examine even impossible things carefully. For 7 days, the stone remained in the house. Ada kept checking it. Nothing happened. No light, no sound, no miracle. By the 7th day, she had almost accepted that the man had simply handed her an ordinary stone with mysterious words. But Uche's mind was moving elsewhere. Very early the next morning, he took the stone. "I want to show it to someone in town," he said. Ada frowned. "Who?" "Just someone who might know if it has any value." Ada, simple-hearted as ever, did not suspect danger. "Okay," she said. "Come back soon." Uche looked at her only briefly before leaving. That day, Ada waited. Evening came. Night came. Uche did not return. At first, she told herself there must be a reason. Maybe he had slept over in the next town. Maybe he had missed the last vehicle. Maybe the person he went to see delayed him. But one day became two. Two became five. Five became 10. Uche was gone. Ada began asking around. No one knew where he had gone. No one had seen him return. Some said he had run away. Some said he had been robbed. Some said he might be dead. Some said men who dream too much often disappear when they smell opportunity. Ada refused to believe the worst, at least at first. She waited outside in the evenings, hoping to see his shape coming down the road. She woke at dawn, listening for his voice. She held on to his mat, his cup, his old shirt. But Uche did not come. What Ada did not know was that before Uche left, life had already planted another secret in her body. She was pregnant. By the time she realized it, Uche had been gone too long. The news struck her with mixed pain. One part of her wanted to cry because the man who should have shared the news was nowhere to be found. Another part of her held her stomach and smiled through tears because at least she had something of him left. The village changed its mouth immediately. Ada's husband has abandoned her. He has gone to the city and forgotten village poverty. Men are wicked. Maybe the child is not even his. That last one hurt most, but Ada kept quiet. She worked harder, even as her body grew heavier. She washed clothes until her waist nearly broke. She fetched water slowly. She ate little. She slept less. Some nights she would hold her stomach and whisper to the baby inside, "Do not worry, I am here." Her closest comfort came from her best friend, Nkechi. Nkechi was bold, where Ada was soft, sharp, where Ada was patient. If Ada still believed the world had goodness, Nkechi believed goodness had to be defended with teeth. When she heard Ada had become pregnant, before Uche disappeared, anger burned inside her. "This man cannot vanish like this," she said. "He must be found." Ada shook her head weakly. "How? We do not even know where he went." "We will know." Months later, when talk spread through the village that a man named Uche from their area had become rich in the city, Enkechi did not wait for confirmation. She traveled. The journey was long and rough. The city was loud, dirty, crowded, and frightening, in a way only cities can be to those raised in villages. But Nkechi did not turn back. She asked around. She moved from market to market. She followed rumors. And finally, she found him. Uche. He had changed. The man she saw was no longer the poor villager who used to return from the farm with dust on his legs. This Uche wore expensive clothes, clean, crisp, imported. A wristwatch shone on his hand. He had a car. Men greeted him with respect. Traders called him chairman. He spoke fast, with the confidence of a man who now believed money had rewritten his identity. He was indeed buying and exporting goods from China to Lagos and selling in Aba market. He had become a known figure, a wealthy man, a man who moved with importance, a man who now looked like he had always belonged to comfort. For a moment, Nkechi simply stared. This was the same Uche. This was the man whose wife still washed people's clothes in the village. The man whose child had not yet seen his face. The man whose Ada cried at night. When Uche finally recognized her, surprise flashed across his face, followed quickly by caution. "Nkechi?" "Yes, it is me." He forced a smile and led her aside. "What are you doing here?" Nkechi looked him straight in the eye. "I should ask you the same thing." Uche glanced around, uncomfortable. Nkechi's anger rose. "You left without a word. Ada has been suffering. She is pregnant. Do you hear me? Pregnant. Your wife is carrying your child." For one brief second, something softened in Uche's face, but it vanished quickly. He looked away. "When did this happen?" he asked. Nkechi almost slapped him. "When did it happen? That is what you are asking me? She was already pregnant before you disappeared." Uche became silent. Nkechi expected shock, tears, urgency, questions. Instead, she saw calculation. That was when a cold feeling entered her stomach. There, in the middle of that crowded city, surrounded by wealth and movement, Nkechi realized something terrible. Money had changed Uche, but not only changed him, it had exposed him. The kindness Ada loved, the humility poverty once forced into him, the gratitude he should have carried. All of it seemed to have dried up. Come back with me, Nkechi said firmly. At least send money. At least write a message. At least let Ada know you are alive. Uche's jaw tightened. It is not that simple. Nkechi laughed bitterly. Not that simple. Your wife is in the village suffering, and it is not simple. Before Uche could reply, a female voice came from behind. Who is this? Nkechi turned. A woman stood there, beautifully dressed, polished, carrying herself with the confidence of someone used to being seen. The scent of expensive perfume seemed to move ahead of her. Gold flashed on her neck and wrists. Uche's face changed again. Fast. Too fast. It was the face of a man caught between two lives. This is, he began, then paused. She is from my village. The woman looked Nkechi over from head to toe, not hiding the contempt in her eyes. From your village? She repeated. Then she smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, Nkechi understood immediately. This woman knew nothing. Or maybe she knew enough to be dangerous. Uche quickly drew the woman aside and said something in a low tone. The woman's expression shifted, and when she looked back at Nkechi, there was now something worse than contempt in her eyes. Possession. Nkechi felt her blood boil. Whatever lie Uche had told this woman, it was clear that Ada had no place in his shiny city life. Later, when Uche returned to her, his face was hardened. I cannot discuss this here, he said. Then where? Nkechi snapped. I will handle it. When? Soon. Nkechi stepped closer. No, not soon. Now. Ada is carrying your child. She has nothing. She still defends you when people insult your name. For a brief second, shame flickered again in Uche's eyes. But still, he stood there, dressed in success, speaking like a man who had outgrown responsibility. Nkechi, he said quietly, go back home. I will send something. What will you send? Excuses? He exhaled impatiently. You do not understand. Then make me understand. Uche looked around once more, then lowered his voice. There are things at stake now. Nkechi stared at him. What things? Money? Status? This new woman? His new name? His new world? Was that what Ada had become? A village embarrassment to be hidden. Nkechi's anger turned sharp and cold. She stood by you when you had nothing, she said. Do not forget that. Uche did not answer. She waited for him to say he would come, to say he had made a terrible mistake, to say he would return before the baby came. But he said none of those things. Instead, he reached into his pocket and brought out money. Nkechi looked at it, then at him. In that moment, the insult landed deeper than a slap. He thought money alone could silence what he had done. He thought Ada's years of loyalty could be folded into currency. He thought fatherhood could be postponed with cash. Slowly, Nkechi stepped back. Keep it, she said. Nkechi, keep it! She shouted, loud enough that a few heads turned. Her chest rose and fell heavily. Let me tell you something, Uche. Poverty did not ruin you. Wealth did. Because now we can all see what was hiding in your heart. Uche's face darkened. Nkechi did not care. She left him there and returned to the village with her heart burning like fire. But before she reached home, her anger began to wrestle with fear. How would she tell Ada? How would she look at her friend's face and say, your husband is alive, rich, and he chose silence? How would she say, he heard that you are pregnant and still did not run home? How would she say, the man you have been defending has already begun building another life? By the time Nkechi entered the village, evening had fallen. Ada was sitting outside her house, one hand on her swollen belly, staring at the road like she had done every day for months. The sight nearly broke Nkechi. Ada saw her and struggled to her feet. Nkechi, her face lit up with hope, so pure, it almost felt cruel. You found him? Ada asked immediately. Did you find him? Is he well? Is he coming? What did he say? So many questions. Too much hope. Too much innocence. Nkechi opened her mouth, but no words came. Ada's smile faltered. Nkechi? The silence stretched. Then slowly, very slowly, Ada's hand moved from her belly to her chest, as if she was suddenly protecting herself from an unseen blow. What happened? She whispered. Nkechi sat down heavily on the wooden bench outside the house. Her body felt weak from the journey, but it was not the journey that weighed her down. It was the truth. That bitter, jagged truth, sitting in her throat like broken glass. Ada lowered herself beside her. Nkechi, please, talk to me. Nkechi looked at her friend's face and hated Uche with a depth she had never known before. How could a man do this to a woman like Ada? A woman who had never asked life for too much. A woman whose only crime was loyalty. Finally, Nkechi spoke, but carefully. I found him. Ada inhaled sharply. Her eyes brightened with tears. He is alive? Yes. Is he well? Yes. Then, why has he not come? Did something happen? Is he in trouble? Nkechi looked away. How could she explain that the real trouble was not around Uche but inside him? Ada grabbed her hand. Nkechi, you are scaring me. Nkechi swallowed. He is in the city. Ada nodded quickly, almost smiling again through her worry. I knew it. I said it. I told them he would not just disappear without reason. I knew he must have gone looking for something better. Nkechi closed her eyes briefly. Yes, she said. He found something better. Ada did not understand the weight inside those words. Then he will come back, Ada said, more to herself than to Nkechi. Maybe he was trying to settle first. Maybe he wanted to surprise me. Nkechi looked at her sharply, but Ada's face was already glowing with fragile hope. That was the problem with good people. Even when truth stood before them with a knife, they still searched its face for mercy. Nkechi could not bring herself to destroy that hope all at once. Not that night. Not when Ada was heavily pregnant. Not when her whole body looked tired enough to collapse. Not when she was still smiling at the thought that love had only been delayed, not betrayed. So Nkechi lied, A small lie, a temporary lie. A lie she told herself she would correct later. He said, "He will send for you." Ada covered her mouth and began to cry. Real tears this time. Relief, joy, pain, all mixed together. "I knew Uche could not forget me," she whispered. Nkechi turned her face away so Ada would not see her own tears. That night, while Ada slept with one hand under her cheek and the other over her stomach, smiling faintly even in sleep, Nkechi remained awake. She sat outside under the moonlight, listening to the distant sounds of dogs barking and insects singing, and thought about the city woman, the polished one, the one who had looked at her as though village people were dirt. Who was she to Uche? A wife? A lover? A lie he was preparing to turn into a permanent home? And if Uche truly meant to abandon Ada, how long before the village knew? How long before the shame reached her doorstep in full? Nkechi clenched her fists. No, she would not allow Ada to be humiliated without a fight. But she also knew something else. This matter was no longer just about heartbreak. It was becoming dangerous. Because men who rise suddenly into wealth often fear one thing more than poverty itself: exposure. And Uche, from the look in his eyes, had something he desperately wanted to bury. Days passed. Ada's pregnancy grew heavier. Her body swelled. Her feet ached. Some mornings she woke with dizziness. Yet even inside all her discomfort, she carried a strange new peace because of what Nkechi had told her. "Maybe he is arranging a place for us," she would say. "Maybe he wants the child to meet him in comfort. Maybe he is ashamed he stayed away too long." Each word was a knife inside Nkechi's heart. Sometimes she wanted to scream the truth. Other times, she told herself that hope was medicine too, and Ada needed it to survive childbirth. Then the baby came. It was a difficult labor. Rain pounded the roof that night. The village midwife came with old cloths, hot water, and strong hands. Ada screamed until her voice broke. She nearly fainted twice. By dawn, a baby boy was born. A son, the kind with Uche's forehead, Uche's nose, and Ada's soft mouth. When the baby cried, Ada cried with him. She pulled him to her chest and whispered, "Your father will see you. He must see you." Nkechi stood by the doorway, soaked in sweat and worry, watching that scene with eyes full of ache. Because even now, even with proof of betrayal hanging like thunder over everything, Ada still spoke of Uche with love. The child was named Chibuzo. God leads the way. The name was Ada's choice. Perhaps because she no longer trusted men to lead anything. From that day on, her life became harder. Walking with a baby was not like walking alone. She could no longer go freely to the river. She had to tie Chibuzo on her back or leave him briefly with an old neighbor. Milk did not always flow well because she was not eating enough. Some days she fed the boy watery pap and went hungry herself. On better days, she managed to wash enough clothes to buy beans, gari, or small fish. Still, she endured. Still, she waited. And still, nothing came from Uche. No letter, no money, no message, nothing. At first, Ada defended him. Then she excused him. Then she worried for him. Then, slowly, Very slowly, a different pain began to enter her. The pain of someone trying not to know what her heart had already started suspecting. One evening, when Chibuzo was about 8 months old, Ada sat outside with him, asleep in her arms. The sunset had stained the sky red. Her face looked older, not by age, but by sorrow. Nkechi, she said quietly, did you tell me everything that day? Nkechi froze. Ada looked ahead, not at her. You hesitated. Nkechi remained silent. Ada gave a faint, tired smile. I know you were protecting me, but sometimes protection can also wound. A long silence passed. Then Ada turned and looked at her friend. Tell me the truth. Is Uche really coming back? And that was the moment the truth, which had been standing at the door for months, finally began to enter. Nkechi opened her mouth just then. Footsteps sounded at the entrance of the compound. Both women turned. A man stood there, not Uche, a stranger. He was dressed like someone from the city, dusty from travel, but clearly not from the village. In his hand was a leather bag. His eyes moved from Ada to the child in her arms, then back to Ada's face. Which one of you is Ada? He asked. The air changed. Something in his tone made Nkechi stand immediately. I am Ada, Ada replied, slowly. The man nodded, as though confirming something important. I have come from Uche. At the mention of that name, Ada's body stiffened. Chibuzo stirred in her arms. Nkechi's eyes narrowed. The man took one step forward. There is something you need to know, he said. And Ada's fingers tightened around her son, as if her spirit had already sensed that whatever was about to be said would not bring
Thanks for
peace.
watching.
The wind rose lightly through the compound. The child whimpered. Nkechi moved closer. Then the man opened his bag. And that was where the real trouble began.